Nicky Lane had ticked all the boxes that she had been told were the essence of a good life. Qualifications, a good job, marriage, motherhood. So why, back at 33, did she find herself disillusioned and disappointed, living what she described as a mediocre life and feeling guilty about how she felt? Nicky decided to ask herself different questions. Questions that led her to tapping into not just logical choices, but heart-led feelings and desires. And that's where she found her why that became the catalyst for her brave and expansive change journey in business and life. I'm sure you'll find this conversation about personal evolution and possibilities both inspiring and enjoyable. My name is Angela Raspis. I'm a business mentor, author, and self-worth educator. And you're listening to Your Next Chapter, a podcast about change and challenges, goals, and dreams, and the mix of strategy and self-worth it takes to step into the next version of you. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. One of the things that I've been discovering as I've been having the opportunity to speak to all the different women who are approaching and going through and looking back on change from all different directions, there's a centerpiece to change, almost like the thing that gets you started. And what I'm observing is it's awareness. Yes, we start with discontent, not into this, not happy, something needs to change, but without dialing up your awareness as to what's going on inside and what else might be possible, change is really, really hard. So that's why I'm so excited to bring you today the woman who has written the book all about change and based so much on her own experiences. She's an incredibly good friend of mine and has a lot of wisdom to share. And so it's with great delight that I introduce you to Nicky Lane. Hey, Nicky.
Hey, Angela, how are you?
Well, we were just having a chat, before we hit record on the stats that are coming through in this current Sydney lockdown, which made us all feel a bit crap. But then we lift up again when we got this opportunity to talk to somebody about something interesting. So I am okay in this particular moment.
Perfect. And yes, chatting to you is definitely uplifting me because it is not a great time at the moment.
Yeah, we all got empathy for each other as we're going through it. But this is the self-awareness piece, which, comes into it as well. If we're aware of what's going on inside and we're aware of our ability to change that state, then we're no longer at the mercy of our surroundings or what is going down at the time. And we can actually change the way we think and feel. But I may be getting ahead of myself there because I got so much out of your book and recognizing that, which is why we needed to talk today. But there's always previous chapters before current chapters. So I'd love you to give us some insight into what led up to your, awakening and what's happened since then. Let's have a chat.
Okay. So what led up to my awakening? I guess this is looking back in hindsight. I had no self-awareness. So for the first 33 years of my life, I lived my life based on what I thought I should do, ticking boxes as you go, basically, finish school, go to uni, get a job, meet a man, get married, have kids. Like it's kind of a tick box thing that you do. And I just had, for me personally, no aspirations. I didn't want to be anything. I just had no self-awareness. And I don't think I even had self-awareness until after my big change, which was a divorce, and leaving my marriage and deciding that I didn't want to be there anymore. So, yeah, when I look back, it's very much I had no self-awareness, and then that crux came, and then it was time for me to go, well, what actually is it that I want to do? Who do I want to be? And really what makes me happy, because I had no idea who I was or what I wanted to do. That was at 33.
That experience, I think, is incredibly common. So many of us have it. There is so much conditioning that happens, societal conditioning as to, well, here's the potential pathways that are laid out for you. I mean, they do sort of change over time. I know when I was leaving school, well, actually when I was in school, I was highly encouraged to take typing because, that was a pursuit for women back then, and that would be a very handy skill. Now, it was pre-computers, I must admit, and I wish I had learned to touch type, but the options were, even then, that was in the mid-80s, were quite closed at the beginning of the 80s, and they started to open up a bit more. But I totally get these societal milestones that we're encouraged to step through, and we just sort of, get on with it. And then sometimes we wake up like you did.
Exactly. And I think the thing about waking up is that people feel that, and I've definitely felt this, is that, well, my life's not that bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are worse people off than me. There are people that are homeless. There are people that are destitute. I lived in an amazing house. I have 2 boys that I dearly loved. I was married to a man with a decent income, and if you looked at my life from the outside, you thought I had an amazing life, and it just wasn't fulfilling me. So I think what a lot of people do is they just move through that life feeling mediocre, excuse me, and not feeling like they deserve to change because it's not that bad.
Absolutely. That's something, when you and I have spoken about, and in my own book, I talk about the next chapter cycle of change that we move through. You go from discontent to trying to work out what you want to do. And a lot of people get stuck right there at that very first stage because of that feeling of almost guilt. Who am I? What right do I have to be unhappy with all these boxes ticked? Because we're told that we'll be happy when we tick the boxes. And so when we discover that we're not, we can sometimes feel a bit abnormal and very ungracious and all that type of thing. So how do you move through that? If that is some of the story that's imprinted on us, we should be grateful. Other people, finish what's on your plate. There's starving people overseas. All that sort of conditioning that's in us. How the heck do we shrug it off and do the brave moves that you did?
Well, you've just nailed it there. It takes bravery. So it takes you basically to have that awareness, first of all, that I'm not happy where I am in my current life, even though it's not as bad as other people's. It's not sustaining me and who I am. So that's the first step, is having that awareness. The second big piece is giving yourself permission that it's okay for you to change what you're not happy with. And I think that's the piece where people fall over a lot. And for me, when I did it, I did it very subconsciously, and I don't think I even realised I was giving myself permission to change. For me, I just did the kind of sums where I went, well, if I went with the status quo, what's my life going to look like in 10 years? But if I change, even though it's scary, it's unknown, I don't know what's ahead of me, it could be amazing, it could be worse. That was when I went, well, I'm happy to give that a shot. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like I'm happy to gamble on my future come what may, because if I can see where I'm heading at the moment, it's not where I want to be. So I feel like it's bravery that we need to enhance because the fear of the unknown is so big.
Yeah, that's the thing. And if you go back to a really basic thing about humans, is one of the things we fear the most is uncertainty. It's when we're uncertain, quite a few people hold on more tightly to what they do know, as opposed to letting go and seeing what comes up instead. So how do you build your bravery? What do you think?
I don't think it's a 3-step solution to building your bravery. I think everybody's different, and I think this is very much where self-awareness comes into it, because going through a change is a personal experience, and it's not that you can then say, if I tick box A, B, and C, well, that's my bravery done, and then I'll be able to move through, because everybody's had different experiences, have different perceptions and different values. So it comes through this self-awareness piece. So I like to do what I call a head and heart exercise, which I kind of just alluded to before. But basically I sit down with a piece of paper which has 2 columns, and I do my head exercise first, and I write down, well, okay, using my head, what are all the logical positives about this change? And I write them down. And then what are all the negatives about this change? So I have that. Like, it's very logical. So for leaving my marriage, it was, well, the positives are, I don't have to be married to somebody I don't want to be married to anymore and things like that. But the negatives are, but I don't know where I'm going to get my money from and all those kinds of things. So it's very much a head and heart head exercise.
Yeah.
Then you put that piece of paper aside and you do your heart exercise. So you do exactly the same thing, but you do it from a feeling perspective. So how would I feel if my life continued in this way? And how would I feel if some of the possibilities that are even I can imagine or that are on the horizon, how would that make me feel? So in my case, my head exercise, all the negatives and positives kind of weighed up that really you should stay because it's a comfort zone. You've got money, what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But with my heart exercise, it was like, I actually don't want to stay. So the heart exercise weighs so much more, has so much more weight and power than the head exercise. But sometimes we need to get that head stuff, the logistics out first before we can see into our heart. And then I think once you can see into your heart by doing this heart exercise, that's where you can draw into your bravery, because essentially it gives you your why. And if we do the whole Simon Sinek thing, that's kind of really what you want to do to help enhance your bravery or whatever it is. Like, your motivation is very much based around your why, and that's your heart exercise. Like, why do I want to do this and how do I feel about it? And that's your motivation to pull up your big girl pants and do something that's brave. But it is, the thing about bravery is it's unknown and it's scary. And sometimes you just go, I've just got to make the decision and do this.
I think that's one of the best descriptions that I've heard of being able to be discerning between the logical head, which is so conditioned by all the, the tick box activities that we talked about before. That's a societal conditioning thing. But the heart wants what the heart wants. And the heart is personal. It's your intuition. It's your inner voice. It's your wisdom speaking, which sits apart from all the things we've been told we should do. So that makes perfect sense to me at a head and a heart level. And I love the idea of, like, when you look at it like that, when you've given your body a voice, then that why floats to the surface. So I think perhaps some of the bravery piece comes from reinforcing to yourself, the self-talk, the reaffirming your choices. And then perhaps it's also handy if you've got at least one belief buddy or two who's around you who you can also rely on as well. But it originally, it needs to come from you. That was just a beautiful way of explaining it. Thank you.
No worries. And I think that just really, it all just comes back to self-awareness, which you talked about at the beginning as being the crux. Doing that head and heart exercise is all you're doing is finding out what's inside you and bringing your awareness to what's inside you. And throughout my book, the tool that I use for people to discover self-awareness is journaling. And I find that, it is such a great way to just have your self-awareness reveal itself, because you just start writing and you let it flow, and the answers come to you. Like, just even, for example, the other day, I was sitting in a lot of fear and I didn't really know what it was about. And I literally, as you do, you push your fear down and you go, it's fine, I'll get to it. And I had pushed my fear down. And then somebody came along and pushed my buttons around my fear, clearly because I needed to face it. It was so intense that I actually drove to the Narrabeen Lake near us and sat with my journal and went, I've got to get this out. But my head was so fearful of understanding the fear that there was so much procrastination around that. So I think I wrote 3 pages of procrastination. And then I was like, okay, now so basically that was my head exercise. I just dumped everything that was logical out and all the things that I was thinking and why am I angry and what am I fearing and And then I went, okay, this is it. So I did. Again, I harnessed my bravery and I wrote at the top of the page, what am I afraid of? And I said to myself, no judgment, no criticism. Let's just see what you're afraid of. And so I started writing and all these amazing things came out. And then the beauty about journaling after that is that once you get that out, then you start to get this amazing perspective that, well, actually, if I fear that, then this is the reason why I fear that. But that actually isn't true. So then my fear is not really true. And you just have these amazing insights. And then by the time you're 10 pages into your journaling, you just go, oh, I've just solved it all. I've got all this awareness and I feel amazing. And you can drive home from where you are and feel amazing. Like, that's the power of journaling, which is giving you the self-awareness, which is the power to change.
This is a fabulous practice, which I feel really strongly about as well. And we've talked about journaling over the years, and it's something that I try and do each morning, specifically just to bring things up, what's floating around that needs to come out at the moment. But excuse me, but using it as a specific tool to really dig down on a feeling or a situation, I think that's really powerful. I mean, what it's doing is, I think, don't believe all your thoughts. Yeah, there was a great friend of mine in the recovery movement that I'm involved in who says, first thought, wrong. That was one of her things about life, is that you have to interrogate your thoughts a little bit, because we do tend to have a little bit of a negativity bias, and we do want to avoid, in general terms, conflict. And we don't want to go racing into the middle of things that are scary. I mean, it's human nature to be a little reticent about those type of things, unless you're, driving for Red Bull or something, and you do that for a life, for a living. But when you allow your fear the free rein to express itself as you did, without judgment, without criticism, what's really going on, that to me feels like a commitment to really building a relationship with yourself, so that you can listen to yourself as thoroughly and as thoughtfully and as openly as you would for a friend or for a child or for your partner. And I think we often forget to do that for ourselves, but we make ourselves so available to listen to others. So your practice of being there and available to listen to yourself feels really, really rich and valuable.
Yeah. And really, at the end of the day, you're just talking to yourself. And it's a lot easier to talk to yourself by writing it down than sitting there, jumping from seat to seat going, so self, what do you think? Oh, let me jump into the other seat. Well, I think this. You feel stupid doing that, which is why journaling is such a powerful tool. And it's so simple. Like, yeah, and I say that to all my clients as well. Self-awareness is one of the simplest things that you can do and get. It's just a matter of practicing it and using this tool to get it, because you can't do anything or change anything if you don't have the awareness around how it is that you currently feel about something. Then it's just the crux of everything. Like, you need to know how you feel about something, what's serving you, what's not serving you, so that you can go, okay, well, these are the things that are making me feel a bit blah, so how about I change that? And I think one of the things that I love the most about life is that these things come up so we can evolve. Do you know what I mean? So if we're constantly pushing them down, we're not evolving and we're not changing. We're just moving forward through change, because we're constantly changing in our lives. Like, we are not the people that we were 10 years ago. Even if we hadn't self-analyzed, we would still be changing. But what the self-awareness piece allows you to do is evolve more positively, because you're using the fear or anything that comes up, whether it's, it can be fear, it can be jealousy, it can be resentment, like all those negative feelings that we come up. If we use them as opportunities to have a self-awareness moment of, why is this coming up for me? What can I do about it, and how can I grow and evolve through that so that I have more awareness?
So it's like, instead of growth just sort of happening in a disconnected sort of way, you can actually be more consciously evolving, without becoming too woo, though I do like a bit of woo, but it's that conscious evolution that you can have instead. And I think from what I'm hearing is that you get the awareness, and that's a practice. Then that, from my perspective, the next piece to work on is the willingness, because I can be aware of something, but I'm not willing to actually do anything about it yet. And so awareness plus willingness, and then whooshka, off we go. So I know from when we've spoken in the past, like one of your great loves was and is floristry, and you did that beautiful floristry course, but you're also delving into the spiritual side of the world. And how did these two pieces come together and then fuse that with your own change experience? How did all those pieces come together into the body of work that you're bringing out into the world now in your own next chapter? Had to get that one in.
Well, interestingly, I feel like the spirituality piece has always been with me. I just think I dampened it down. So when I actually rediscovered my spirituality after I left my husband and went on this little self-awareness journey, it was a bit like coming home for me.
Nice.
The things that I learned in my Theta Healing course, it was like my body was like, I've been doing this my whole life. Like I had moments where I was doing something in that course and I'd go, I used to do this as a kid lying in bed, And so I think it was actually really inbuilt in me, and it just had to be rediscovered. So the spirituality thing, I just love it. I just actually talked about it on my live on my Facebook the other day, and I was talking about Spiritual Sally, who's one of my characters. And I really went into all my beliefs, which we don't need to go into today because that's another story. But it's like people get scared of spirituality and what it means. And really at the end of the day, the meaning of spirituality is just believing in a higher purpose than yourself. And it gives you a meaning and it gives you a richness to your life that you wouldn't have if you didn't have that higher belief. And really that's all it is. It's not about saying, well, you have to believe this or have to believe that. You can believe in whatever you want to believe. It's just about believing in a bigger purpose rather than you. So my spirituality, I love it, and I love that, having that belief in that bigger purpose. My floristry kind of came really just because I wanted to do something a bit different. And I've always loved flowers. I didn't realise how much I would love the floristry course. I kind of just did it for something to do, I guess, and to just be a bit different and use my spare time a bit, have a hobby. But I really, really loved it, and it just came naturally to me, and I've always loved flowers, and it was just something that I really, really enjoyed. And it's interesting that in the old me, I started off by going, well, I have to make this a business. If I'm going to, if I'm going to invest in this course, well, how am I going to make this make me money, and how will I sell my bouquets and blah, blah, blah. And then about halfway through the course, I just seriously cut myself some slack and went, how about you just enjoy it and do it as a hobby, which is what I do now, and I love it. And then when I was writing...
Imagine that, us actually saying that we can do something for the pure enjoyment. It doesn't have to have a deep business connection. I mean, you and I have been, our own entrepreneurs and running our own businesses for years. And again, some of that wiring comes in that if you're going to invest some time, then, it has to pay off. And it doesn't. Sometimes it can just be a delight and a joy and just see what happens.
And it's interesting that when you force that business strain onto it, it doesn't have that same joy and delight. So taking that pressure off, and really, at the end of the day, that's all self-awareness as well. Actually, I'm putting pressure on myself here. It doesn't feel great. What is it about that? So actually, it's the fact that it's a business. How about if I take that away? Does it bring the enjoyment back? Yes, it does. So see how that self-awareness piece just keeps coming back all the time. It's just quite amazing.
Yeah, self-awareness is a superpower. It's built into so many of my own models. And in the self-worth trilogy, the first step is self-awareness, then self-compassion, then self-belief. Yeah, self-awareness is the birthplace of every possibility, every possibility and every possibility of change, for sure. Okay, sorry, I interrupted again. Tell us more.
That's okay. No, it's fine. So where was I? So floristry, did the course, loved it, hobby. And then when I was writing my book, I have characters in my book, and one day I was just like, oh my gosh, each character can have a flower, and what I can do is bring the healing properties of flowers into it, because through all my learnings and stuff through my spiritual world, I was very in tune with the fact that trees and all nature has a beautiful energy to it. And I had done a bit of flower therapy as well. So I just combined all of them, and it just flowed, and it was beautiful, and it ended up being this lovely little package where I've got 44 characters that have 44 flower energies behind them, and they're just beautiful. I love them.
So I can hear there's a key word in what you said there, is that it just all flows. You know, we often hear of the concept of resistance and, you know, what stops us from moving in a certain direction. But we need to speak just as often about the concept of flow, where things just seem to happen. They fall into place. The resistance disappears because you're on the path that's right for you. Not the right path, because there is no right path. There's the path that's right for you. And it sounds as though that's exactly the experience you had.
Yeah. Well, basically, when I wasn't going to write a book, I was just trying to find a way to get my information out. And I started doing workshops and online programs and things like that, which is much more my forte than being a writer. And it didn't work. And then somebody said to me, why don't you just put all that information into a book so people can digest it a lot easier, because I have way too much content for the workshop and the online program. And I was like, well, I don't really want to write a book.
It wasn't on my to-do list, but
it wasn't really on my to-do list. So I basically just put it out there, and I said, all right, universe, if you want this book to come out, and if this is what I'm meant to do, it has to flow. And if it stops flowing, I'm going to stop. And it flowed from day one. And when I say it flowed, it doesn't mean it wasn't hard work. It doesn't mean you didn't put in long hours. It didn't mean that, you know, you didn't do your research and everything. It wasn't like I just opened my mind one day and a whole book spewed out, you know.
I wish.
Like, you wish. You know, go to bed one night and go, I'm going to write a book, and tomorrow it's all there. It didn't quite happen like that. So I think people, when you talk about being in flow, they think that means easy coasting, and that's not what it means at all. It just means that it feels light, that even though it's hard work, it's enjoyable work, and that it's doors opening for you, and it's synchronicities that happen, and it's things like that. Whereas when you're not in flow, it's opportunities don't come to fruition, doors close, you know, things feel heavy. And I've definitely been in businesses that I've tried to run in the past that have been like that, and it's a really hard slog, and you feel defeated every single day. And the beauty about it is if you find yourself not in flow, all you need to do is just make the decision to step back in flow and go back to that heart intuition feeling and go, okay, well, I'm just going to do what feels light, and I'm going to do what feels right. And so when I wrote my book in flow, I would have days where I would be like, I should write today, but it didn't feel light and it didn't feel easy. So I just didn't write that day. And then I would just wait until the time felt right, and then I would go ahead and do whatever I needed to do. And that's about what's being in flow. So it's not I have to do this today to get it done. It's I choose to do this today because it feels easy. And just, sorry to kind of monologue on, but I actually I run a corporate coaching business on the side as a normal job in addition to my other work that I do. And I even use my intuition and my flow in that. So if I have my to-do list sitting there, and this is a very logical corporate, you know, business world, I just go, well, what feels like the best thing that I need to do today off this to-do list? And I can guarantee that every time I pick that thing, when it feels like the right thing to do and it feels light and it feels like it's going to flow that day, it does. And it'll be the best time to do that thing because the people that I need to speak to are available, or, you know, it gobsmacks me every day that I giggle to myself that because I can run a business in flow using my intuition in a very non-spiritual world, it flows and it makes me giggle every day.
That sounds like a good place to be to be creating from.
It is.
So we're saying that there's such a different energy between I choose to and I have to. You can even when you say those words out loud, I can feel the different, energy in my body. I have to do this. I've got to do this. I should do this versus I get to, I choose to, I want to. Totally different. So I think discernment is an incredibly important skill for us to develop, and that can only come from tuning inwards, because it's discernment as to what's feeling right for us. And I agree. I know you. You're a hard worker. I know you. Have a brain which wraps itself around systems and tech so well, but you balance that beautifully with this other side of you, the spiritual side of you. And I have similar feelings in terms of I've got a really structured marketing, corporate consulting brain, but there's this other whole side as well. And when I decided to step more into that, when I let go of my marketing agency and started really exploring things like the self-worth piece, which is so important to me, things just started to flow. And I noticed, when I go into a bookstore, do I ever pick up a business book? No. Do I pick up books on confidence and spirituality and personal development and growth and neuroscience? Yes. So again, that's following that feeling of flow. What feels light? What fascinates me? What is it that's captivated me? That's where my path lies, much like what you're experiencing with yours. And I want anyone listening to recognize that as well. It doesn't mean that we're, lazing on a beach and laptop lifestyle. No, we're still working, but the work doesn't feel heavy. Even though it might have the same intensity sometimes, it doesn't feel as heavy because we're in alignment. We're in tune with what's going on inside.
Exactly.
It feels good. So tell us about the actual book. Now, you're saying in there that there's 44 characters and it's called The Change Journey. And I'll make sure that I put the links onto the page as well where the show notes are, but it's very easy to find it. Is it a .com? Tell me the website and then tell us what I can expect in the book when I have it in my hot little hands.
So it's thechangejourney.com.au, and you can expect, it's a self-awareness guide. And interestingly, a lot of people who have purchased the book have contacted me and said, I thought I would read it and then pass it on to somebody else, but I've now realised it's a handbook for life and I'm keeping my copy, so can I get a second copy for the person that I was going to pass it on to? And really that, in essence, is what the book is about. So there are 10 stages of self-awareness. And within each stage, there's 4 or 5 characters, which brings out the up to the 44 characters. And each character is a personality or a character trait that you can work on or work with, depending on where you are within your change journey. So, for instance, some of my characters are optimistic Olivia, grateful Greta, spiritual Sally, proud Pearl, brave Bridget. So they all have the character or the trait within them that you can work on or harness, or it might be something that you need to support. So what basically you can do is say, okay, well, at the moment, so a lot of your people, if it was self-worth, they would just go to the self-worth chapter and have a look at the characters within the self-worth chapter and start working with them to bring in that energy and what you can do. And within the book, there's exercises of journaling and things that you can do to bring in more self-awareness around that personality trait and whether that's serving you or it's something that you want to change.
Awesome. So do you find that the feedback you're getting, and it sounds so great when someone says, well, I was going to give it away, but no, it's mine. I need another one. I love that. That's the best feedback you can get as an author, I think. But so when someone is picking up that book, is it like a linear go from front to back? Is it a throw it open and find, what's talking to you today? Is it a, hey, I'm feeling this, so I'm going to go and look for this character that supports me? I guess there's multiple ways of utilizing the experience.
Yep. And to be honest, it's all of the above. So at the beginning of the book, I say how to use this book. If you really don't know where you're going to start, you could read it from start to finish, and you'd get a sense of all the different areas. And then you could go back and start working on the ones that you want to work with.
That's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did when I read it. Because, yes, spoiler alert, I have read this book and I do hugely recommend it. But I remember exactly where I was when I was reading it and making notes, putting little Post-it notes. Here are 2 or 3 characters that I really want to, focus more on, tap more into that particular energy. But I read from front to back first so that I could get an overall sense of the journey that is here for all of us. And then, yes, you hone in on parts that are most relevant to you and where you are right now. That may be different next year, but right now, these are the characters that are most important to me.
Exactly. And some people might be further along in their change journey than others. So there might be people that want to start right at the beginning at the self-discovery, but there might be some people that go, actually, I know all about that. Like, I've got my self-awareness pretty sorted in those areas. So I'm going to start here and move forward from here. So the book goes in a linear fashion through what I went through in my self-awareness journey. So basically, I started at self-discovery and I end up at self-worth and self-care at the end. So the book follows my journey, and that doesn't mean that that's going to be the same for everybody else. So there is an assessment that you can do that basically says if you answer all these questions, you'll tell you which area that you want to work on the most, which some of my people do. You can open it to a page and see what character you get, but I also do have cards which are like oracle cards. So they're even more fun because you can just pull a card each day and say, well, which character do I need to support me today, and pull that character. And then you can either read the little book in the card pack, or you could then go to the big book and say, okay, well, let me get some more in-depth information on this character.
I love that. And I've seen how you've put on Instagram and Facebook 2 places where you should be following Nicky and the change journey, where you put out 3 cards and we choose one and see what the energy of that card is. You've been using them in that way, which I love. Well, Nicky, as we're coming like full circle on this conversation, imagine a woman who's listening to us at the moment who is on the edge of their own next chapter. They're considering change and for whatever reason, a lack of self-belief, some fear, some doubt, some conditioning, etc. What characters would you pull out of the change journey to help that woman gather her courage and step forward and, and really bring that idea out into the world?
Oh, that's a tough question.
I know there's lots, but let's just narrow it down to a couple you think might be helpful at the moment.
Okay, well, basically then I would start with the core principles, because the core principles basically embed themselves through a whole change journey. So within each stage of the change journey, there are the characters. But really, if you wanted to just get an overall view and have the real core principles of any change journey, that's where I would start. So that would be grateful Greta. So that's, having your gratitude lists and being grateful. Optimistic Olivia, really looking for the positives in things. Zealous Zelda, having enjoyment, going with the flow, doing that lightness stuff. Confident Carol, definitely building your confidence and moving forward with that. Empowered Emma, so really choosing what empowers you and feels good. And then the crux of it all is joyful Jill, because at the end of the day, the whole point of the change journey was because I wanted to be more happier in my life. And that's what I wish for other women in the world, is to really just change little things in their lives so that they can bring more happiness. Because when they're happier in their lives, the people around them are going to get happier, and then the people around them are going to get happier. And then we have this beautiful ripple effect of joy throughout the world. And I just think I'm not talking about 24/7 Pollyanna skipping down the street joy. I'm just talking about this beautiful internal joy where you feel happy and satisfied with who you are and what you stand for and where you're going.
Yeah, I love that. I think joy is it's the fullest expression of a life well lived, I think, and that ripple effect that you're talking about is something that I relate to entirely. If I'm joyful, then that rubs off on so many people around me. I totally agree with the ripple effect. Beautiful. Well, we have got some great core principles there that you can start to follow as you explore your own change journey. So the way that I like to finish these conversations, my friend, is I have a next chapter Chapter playlist, which we're putting together on Spotify. Music can really change a person's state, and we're looking to add songs to that each one of the people who I talk to on this podcast, a song that uplifts you or energizes you that we could add to the list. And also because being such a reader, I devour books and love them, and so much of my own change journey has been facilitated by what I've read, by books like your own and others as well. So we'd love to add a suggestion to the book list as well. So what do you have to share with us?
My song is Happy by Pharrell Williams.
Oh, yes.
Very uplifting. Love that song. Every time it comes on, I just go, yep, I feel good.
It's that beat right at the beginning, isn't it? Like dun, 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 and off you go. Like as soon as I hear it, I'm dancing. I'm with you there. Okay.
I love that song. And my book is Infinite Possibilities by Mike Dooley. So a lot of my spiritual beliefs came from Mike Dooley, and that book really changed my life.
Yeah, I loved getting his notes from the universe. I love his perspective on the world as well. Those are two great suggestions. So thank you. So just to finish up, where people can find you, is it best to be looking on out there for Nicky Lane or for the change journey? How is it easiest to connect with you?
The easiest way is to do the change journey, and the website is thechangejourney.com.au, and same on Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today and the joy that the possibilities of self-awareness have come to us through listening to your own journey. I've really appreciated your time.
Thanks for having me. It was beautiful talking to you.
And to you, my lovely listener, are you feeling a change journey bubbling up inside as well? Nicky and I come from the same sort of ideas. I call it a next chapter. Nicky calls it a change journey. For you, it might be a new lease on life. However it looks for you, if you've got that feeling bubbling inside that more is possible, it's okay to feel discontent. It's okay to recognize that you're not happy. Your first port of call needs to be that relationship with yourself. And if something needs to be changed so that you can blossom into the most joyful version of you, then you deserve the opportunity to do that. I hugely encourage you to go and get a copy of The Change Journey, which you can through Nicky's website. And if you're thinking to go down a business path, back that up with your next chapter. I reckon these two resources together are incredibly powerful, and we can't wait to see and hear what unfolds for you as you change into your next chapter. So thanks very much for your time listening, and until the next episode, take very good care.